Okay, picture this. It's like something straight out of a TV drama, a high-stakes scene right near the border. You've got this notorious cartel lieutenant. He's got this huge, heavily armed security team all around him, and they're throwing this massive, chaotic beach party at an RV resort in all places. Then, boom, the military raids it. The main guy, the kingpin, and like 30 of his gunmen, they just vanish, escape into the night. But the biggest catch of the whole operation, it turns out to be this seemingly ordinary guy found drunk in the kitchen, just casually cooking some seafood. Totally oblivious, it seemed, to the raid, the chaos, everything. But this wasn't fiction. This actually happened. It was the capture of Santiago Meza López. He used to be a bricklayer, a truck driver. And somehow, through this really bizarre and frankly gruesome career path, he got this chilling nickname, El Pozolero, the stew maker. So today our mission is a deep dive into the shocking reality of this man Meza, the guy who allegedly dissolved hundreds, maybe even thousands of people for the Tijuana cartel.
We're going to look at the strategic pressures of the drug war that actually created a demand for its services, but his unique character, kind of emotionless apparently. Plus the big legal controversy around his sentence, which seemed incredibly light.
Yeah, to really get how Meza ended up drunk in that kitchen, you need to understand the situation that basically created him. We're talking Tijuana around 2008, 2009, peak cartel conflict. I mean, nationally, the violence was just staggering. Over 5,700 violent deaths across Mexico in 2008 alone.
Wow.
And in Tijuana specifically, the violence was driven by this really bitter rivalry. You had Teodoro Alteo Garcia Cimental. He ended up being Meza's boss, fighting against Fernando Sanchez Arellano, who was known as El Ingeniero.
Right, and this internal war, it wasn't subtle, was it? It spilled onto the streets in these horrifying ways. We're talking about deliberate displays like headless torsos, mutilated bodies just left out in public. It was their way of communicating, of intimidating.
Exactly. That kind of overt violence, it definitely spread terror, but strategically it started to backfire. All that public horror brought intense media scrutiny, federal attention, even DEA involvement. The cartels were basically drawing too much heat.
That's a really interesting shift, isn't it? From just raw public terror to thinking more strategically about discretion. It shows the cartel adapting, realizing maybe long-term survival meant, avoiding that kind of federal spotlight. They needed a different way.
Precisely. Suddenly the need wasn't just for muscle, it was for a cleanup crew, someone who could make bodies, evidence just vanish completely. Wow. This operational need, this pressure to become invisible, that's really what gave rise to Santiago Meza López. And the irony is thick, right? While everyone's focused on the shootouts and the bodies in the street, it's the hidden methodical work of the stew maker that allows the war machine to keep running just out of sight. And that nickname, pozole, it's a traditional Mexican stew often made with pork, calling Meza the stew maker. Well, it makes his job horrifyingly clear.
So, okay, if you need someone discreet, totally reliable, who won't ask questions, who do you pick? Meza's background, as you said, was just normal, born in '64, big family, 10 kids, poor background. Started out laying bricks, honest work. Then he joins the Arellano Felix organization, this really powerful cartel. But he starts out just looking after their horses.
Right. He wasn't some natural-born killer climbing the ranks. He got noticed for other things, loyalty, efficiency, and, crucially, this temperament. Sources described him as having a superb psychological quality. He could apparently face these incredibly bloody scenes, almost like a robot, without emotion, just focused on the task.
That detachment. That's chilling.
And that's exactly why they picked him. Around 1996, the story goes, the cartel was under pressure, looking for new ways to dispose of bodies, chemical methods. They needed someone utterly reliable, someone who wouldn't flinch or question things to basically run this new cleanup department, and Meza fit the bill.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of this, the sheer industrial nature of it. He learned the technique, apparently, from chemical experts. And his training wasn't just reading manuals, it was hands-on. They started him off practicing on a large pig's leg.
Yeah, they needed to be sure it worked, that the flesh would be completely dissolved.
And once they perfected it on the pig leg, about 6 months later, the sources say the subject was human.
And he developed this procedure. It became known as the recipe. Pretty straightforward in a horrifying way. He used these big 200-liter drums, like industrial containers, filled them with water, then added 2 big sacks of caustic soda, sodium hydroxide.
Okay, so not just a container, but like a makeshift cauldron.
Exactly. That mixture with the body inside was put over a fire, brought to a boil.
And he said the bodies would cook.
Yeah, that was his term. For about 8 hours, they'd dissolve until, according to him, all that was left were teeth and nails. Maybe some small bone fragments.
8 hours. boiling human remains systematically over and over. It's
just real horror. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And for doing this, day in, day out, he got a steady wage. Sources vary a bit, but somewhere between $600 and maybe $915 a week. He basically turned the ultimate act of erasing someone into a regular salaried job.
and the scale of it.
Yeah.
This is where it goes beyond just one gruesome story and becomes this massive tragedy. Meza himself, he confessed to disposing of over 300 bodies, over 9 years doing this. He always insisted, though, that he only got the victims after they were already dead.
Right. He even gave specifics. Claimed his busiest month ever was December 2007. Said he processed 32 bodies in that single month.
32 people dissolved in 1 month.
And he was organized about it, meticulous even. He used protective gear, gas masks, thick rubber gloves, sensible given the chemicals. And get this, to avoid the risk of, transporting barrels of liquid remains, around the city, he actually engineered his own disposal system.
What do you mean?
He designed this underground drainage setup at his work sites so he could just pour the resulting thick, sludgy liquid straight into the ground. No transport needed, much harder to detect.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
The methodical planning behind it all, the even careful plans fall apart. His career came to a crashing halt in 2009. By then, he'd switched sides, working for El Teo, and he gets caught at that beach party, the one at the La Mission RV Resort.
Yeah, the location itself says a lot. A major tourist spot. Shows how bold, maybe overconfident, the cartel had become. And when the military raided, like you said, the main target, El Teo, and his huge security detail, they fought their way out. They escaped. It wasn't exactly a clean sweep by the military.
Which makes you wonder, if Meza was so important, the guy who erased all the evidence, why was he the one left behind? Did they just see him as expendable?
It seems like it was probably just bad luck for him, combined with the fact he was drunk. Reports say he was pretty disoriented from the alcohol, plus the noise from his own cooking. He was making seafood right there in the camp. Meanwhile, the train guys, the gunmen, they executed a tactical retreat.
So his capture was almost accidental, a side prize.
Kind of feels that way. An unexpected bonus for the military in the midst of the chaos.
But the cartel's reaction after he was caught, that tells a different story about his value, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Almost immediately after he was transferred to police custody, commandos hit the police station where he was being held. Hard. Sprayed the place with over 200 rounds from heavy weapons. That's not a minor skirmish. That's a serious attempt to get him back or maybe silence him permanently.
Right. That kind of response screams that he knew too much. He was a huge liability for them now.
Definitely. It confirms he held critical information. So when the authorities finally paraded him in front of the press, which they often did back then, Meza was apparently quite emotional. He wept, apologized to the victims' families, but he stuck to his story. He was just a guy trying to make a living. He never killed anyone himself.
An apology doesn't mean much without answers, though. And this leads to maybe the most painful question for everyone involved, especially the families. Were Meza's numbers even accurate? He confessed to dissolving around 300 people. But the physical evidence found at his dumping grounds, that painted a much, much darker picture.
Exactly. When investigators started excavating these sites, these pits where he said he dumped the remains, they didn't find evidence consistent with just 300 bodies. Forensic teams uncovered multiple large pits, and inside, tens of thousands of bone fragments, countless human teeth.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah, based on the sheer volume of fragments, the number of distinct teeth. Conservative forensic estimates started suggesting the real victim count, just from those sites, could easily be in the thousands.
Thousands. So Meza 300, that was just a fraction.
It certainly looks that way. It implies either his operation was way bigger than he admitted, or perhaps those sites were used by others too, over a longer period, maybe multiple stew makers.
Which makes the legal outcome even more.
Yeah.
Stunning. He was sentenced in 2012, but he only got 10 years.
10 years.
And not for homicide. Not even for destroying human remains, which seems like a direct fit. Only for organized crime offenses.
And this highlights a massive challenge for the justice system, particularly back then in Mexico. To get a homicide conviction, you usually need to identify a specific victim and then prove a direct link between the killer and the act of killing.
Which is impossible when the body is sludge.
Pretty much. When all you have is chemically dissolved remains, maybe some teeth, scattered fragments, meeting that high legal standard for homicide is incredibly difficult, if not impossible.
So the very thing that made him so valuable to the cartel, his efficiency and total erasure, also made him almost untouchable for the worst crimes in court.
That's a big part of it. And even prosecuting the destruction of bodies often required proving it was done specifically to cover up the murder itself. If Meza just kept saying, hey, they were already dead when I got them and authorities couldn't prove otherwise, the most severe charge that could reliably stick was often under the umbrella of organized crime.
That sentence, just 10 years, understandably caused a huge public outcry. People suspected corruption, or at least felt it was a total failure of justice. There were relatives, but 100 families of missing people from that area, El Teo's stronghold. They actually asked the authorities for permission to meet Meza.
Wow.
Yeah, they wanted to show him photos of their missing loved ones, just desperate for any flicker of recognition, any clue about what happened.
That's heartbreaking, and it shows the depth of the need for answers. So what's his status now? His original release date would have been around 2022.
Right.
But authorities have been working hard to file new related charges against him. The goal seems pretty clear. Keep him incarcerated. There's a recognition, I think, that the initial sentence was just grossly inadequate, given the potential scale of his actions and the thousands still missing.
So, the story of El Pozolero.
Mhm.
It's more than just a gruesome tale of cartel violence. It's really a chilling case study, isn't it? About how strategic needs, the need for discretion, can create these horrifying niches. A man with this methodical, almost clinical efficiency, adapting this terrible trade because the cartel needed complete erasure, not public spectacle.
Exactly. And that brings us to a final, really disturbing thought to leave people with. If the forensic evidence at just one man's known dumping sites pointed towards potentially thousands of victims, far more than his confession, it just underscores the industrialized scale of this horror, and it forces you to ask, what other dark methods were being used? How many other stew makers might have been operating quietly across Mexico during that period of intense violence, whose gruesome work sites we've never even discovered?